The Enlightenment's promise of progress. The Enlightenment, 17th–18th century, emphasized reason, individual rights, and scientific advancement. Thinkers like Voltaire, Locke, and Rousseau championed liberty and democracy, shaping modern ideas about governance and human rights. However, beneath its ideals, the Enlightenment also carried contradictions that contributed to oppression and colonialism. The use of reason to justify hierarchies. While Enlightenment thinkers promoted equality, many also believed in racial and cultural hierarchies. Philosophers such as Immanuel Kant and Voltaire classified non-European societies as less developed, reinforcing the idea that European civilization was superior. This pseudo-scientific reasoning justified the subjugation of non-European peoples. The role of Enlightenment thought in colonialism. European powers used Enlightenment principles to rationalize colonial expansion. The idea of the civilizing mission argued that colonized nations needed European guidance to become enlightened. This mindset provided moral justification for imperialism, portraying colonization as a benevolent act rather than an exploitative one. Scientific racism and the classification of peoples. The Enlightenment fueled early forms of scientific racism. Thinkers like Carl Linnaeus and Georges Cuvier classified humans into racial categories, ranking Europeans as superior. These racial hierarchies reinforced colonial rule, legitimizing slavery and systemic oppression under the guise of scientific knowledge. Economic exploitation and capitalist expansion. Enlightenment ideas about free markets and capitalism contributed to colonial exploitation. Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, 1776, promoted economic liberalism, but European nations applied these principles to extract wealth from colonies. Resources and labor were exploited, benefiting European economies while devastating colonized nations. The contradictions of Enlightenment human rights. The Enlightenment's emphasis on liberty and rights often excluded non-Europeans. While figures like Thomas Jefferson wrote about freedom and democracy, they also owned slaves. The American and French revolutions, inspired by Enlightenment ideals, did little to extend rights to colonized or enslaved peoples. The impact on indigenous societies. Enlightenment-era colonialism devastated indigenous cultures. European powers imposed their languages, legal systems, and religions on indigenous populations, often through violence. The idea that European civilization was superior led to the erasure of traditional knowledge and forced assimilation. Resistance to Enlightenment colonialism. Despite its dark side, Enlightenment ideals also inspired resistance movements. Anti-colonial leaders like Toussaint Louverture in Haiti and later independence movements in Africa and Asia used Enlightenment rhetoric to demand self-rule, exposing the hypocrisy of European colonial powers. The Enlightenment's legacy in modern colonial structures. The effects of Enlightenment-era colonialism persist today. Economic disparities, racial inequalities, and political instability in former colonies are direct consequences of this period. Many modern debates on global justice and decolonization stem from these historical injustices. Rethinking the Enlightenment's influence. The Enlightenment was not purely a force for progress. While it shaped democracy and human rights, it also justified colonial domination and racial oppression. Acknowledging this duality allows for a more nuanced understanding of history, encouraging critical reflection on how Enlightenment ideas continue to shape the world today.